We have some pretty significant news today. The NHL has come to terms to send the NHL players to the Olympic Games in 2022. We also have the list of new protocols for the upcoming NHL season that players will have to follow. And the Senators assigned Drake Batherson to a long-term contract. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some pretty huge news. We finally get confirmation after all this time, all this negotiating, that the NHL and IIHF have come to terms on an agreement to send the NHL players to the Olympic Games coming up here in 2022. So that's great news. Now there is a few key details here. For example, there is not going to be any COVID insurance for these players. But the players in the NHLPA have opted to go anyway. So if these players do contract COVID and end up missing time, which we're going to talk about the protocols here as well that they've agreed to for the upcoming NHL season, then they very well could have an impact on their actual wages, because one of the protocols is that if they're not vaccinated or have to miss time because of COVID, then there is obviously some issues in that regard that they could end up losing wages. But the good news is, though, we will have NHL player participation. Now, there is also another key detail here. They have up until, I believe it's sometime in early January, that the NHL could decide to pull out. There is a clause in there that, given the situation with COVID, if it impacts the Olympic Games or where they're being located, or if COVID has and ended up kind of wreaking havoc on the NHL schedule, they've had to reschedule or cancel a bunch of games, and it's going to have a major impact on their season schedule, then they can change their minds and opt out here up until that point. So that's obviously another very important key feature. Even though the players do not have coverage for COVID reasons, they do have insurance coverage should they obtain a normal NHL-related, hockey-related injury. So obviously, if they do get hurt over there, they don't have to worry about losing pay or having anything impacted that way when they return to North America and get back to their NHL city. So that part is obviously good. Now, when it comes to the additional protocols, we don't yet know exactly everything that's going to be in place, but it is expected that it's going to be an extremely tight bubble. The players are really not going to be able to do a whole lot besides go back and forth between the rink and the hotel they're staying at. It looks as though it's quite likely they're not going to be able to bring any guests with them. There's a high likelihood that there will not be any fans in attendance, at least at this point. I mean, things can change. It's still a ways away, and I'm sure they'll have fans if they're able to, and if it's considered safe to do so, obviously. But at this point right now, it is a decent possibility that may not happen. So at least we have the good news that the Olympics is going to likely have the NHL players here. It's a done deal for now. Hopefully nothing changes that, because I know the NHL players going to the Olympics certainly make it a much more competitive tournament and gets the best on best in the world. And I know for me, especially as a fan, that's what I feel is really good for growing the game here as well. Now, as I mentioned, the NHL and the NHLPA also announced late yesterday that they've come to terms on their NHL COVID protocols for the upcoming season. It looks like there's going to be extremely different rules depending on the players' vaccination status, if they're vaccinated versus not. It's going to be extremely different. I know back about a few weeks or almost a month ago, the total average for players that were received their 2 doses of vaccine was around 85%. Now it's up to about 95%. So there's only about 5% of the NHL player population that's considered not fully vaccinated. And of course, there could be which I don't have the stats on, but there could be a decent number of those that have 1 dose, just haven't had their second one yet as well. So this likely won't impact a great deal of players, but obviously it could. So for example, if a team has to travel for an away game and either the state or provincial rules where they're going to be playing dictates that everybody has to be vaccinated, then the unvaccinated player will not be able to play and they will not be paid. So if they miss time due to COVID-related reasons, they are going to lose money. So this is going to have a financial impact on them if they're not able to perform their duties because they've decided to not be vaccinated. So that's a big one. Vaccinated players will still be tested. They're going to be tested about every 72 hours, whereas unvaccinated players are going to be tested daily, so there's a difference there. The other big key feature of these protocols, as well as 50% of the incurred costs here when it comes to like the testing, additional travel, hotels, and everything, all the costs related to the protocols are going to be charged to the hockey-related revenue. So essentially that'll come out of the 50-50 split between the players and the owners. So obviously they're going to share the cost of this, which is probably the fair and right thing to do, considering it's not really something that anybody wants, but both parties agree that they have to do for safety and security of everyone involved. So again, this will certainly have an impact on the bottom line for the players moving forward. Another big thing as well for unvaccinated players, when they are on a road trip, they're pretty much going to be confined to going between the hotel and the rink only, whereas vaccinated players will have a little bit more freedom and liberty to do a little bit more things. But even in the hotel, on the road, an unvaccinated player would not be able to use any of the hotel facilities, such as a pool or a spa. They can't go out to dinner. If they want basically any outside food, they'd either have to do like some sort of a contactless delivery or like a curbside pickup, something to that effect. That they're going to be extremely strict and limited. And also, if unvaccinated players are determined to have put themselves at a high risk, then they can actually be fined as well for violating protocols. I know we've seen some scenarios last year where a few players were suspended by the team, and it was believed that that was the reasons, but now they actually have additional provisions that they can actually be fined here as well. So it's going to be a fair bit different this year. We know as well that even though it looks like there will be fans allowed in all arenas, they may not be fully at 100% capacity everywhere. I know at this point, like for example, the Montreal Canadiens have confirmed that they're still only allowed 7,500 fans as of this point. I know all the Canadian locations are going to be required for fans to wear a mask as well as be vaccinated. So we'll have to see how that situation evolves. I mean, it's a step forward for sure, but until we can get full arenas, it's going to continue to have a financial impact here on the teams and the bottom line of the league and the players here as well. NHL media will have access to NHL players this year in the locker room, so that's kind of be able to resume what we used to before. Of course, media members will be again required to be vaccinated, and they will be required to wear a mask when going to do those locker room type interviews to obviously reduce the risk for any potential exposures in that regard as well. And players, of course, can opt out. They don't have to agree to these protocols and play. They can decide that, you know what, I'm sitting out this season. And if they make that choice, the team can either basically toll their contract, which means they can bump it out an extra year, tack a year on and just take off this year, or they could just cancel this year and say that they're not going to do that. The team has the option for any players that may choose to do so. At this point, we're not aware of any players that plan to do that, but we're still a little bit of time away here from training camp opening. If anybody is going to be making that decision, then we likely won't know that probably for a few more weeks' time. Now, when it comes to the testing requirements as well, when it comes to players and being tested, like I said, 72 hours for the vaccinated, daily for the unvaccinated, that will be reviewed again in early November and could possibly change. It's going to depend on the overall COVID situation at the time. If they reach a point that they feel that the risk is substantially lowered, then they may cut back how frequently these players are tested. But that is the only real part of this that seems to be, up for debate or subject to review here as time goes on, but certainly geared towards giving much more liberties to those that have taken the option here to receive the vaccine versus not. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have other news today. The Ottawa Senators and Drake Batherson have come to terms on a long-term deal. They locked the young forward up on a 6-year contract. Now, Drake Batherson's average annual value will be just a smidge shy of $5 million. It's $4.975. So overall, to me, I think this is a great contract for both sides. Just shy of $30 million. It's also very much backloaded. Like for the coming year, he's going to earn 2.5. Then it goes to 3.5. Then he has 2 years at 5.4. And then the final 2 years at 6.5. So to me, that makes a ton of sense because you expect him to continue to get better and better and better as time goes on. He'll be 30 years old when the contract expires. So obviously those peak years are likely going to be those middle years where he's got the increased salary. And then, of course, it tails off and he would be eligible to be a UFA at age 30. Like this guy, It was a late bloomer, and a lot of people, I've seen a mixed variety of opinions on social media today. I've seen some people feel that this is a little bit rich. I've seen some people feel that he hasn't proven enough, and I've seen some that think it's a great contract. It's going to be a steal of a deal down the road. But you got to remember, Drake Batherson has been a late bloomer his entire hockey life. He didn't even play a full season of major junior hockey until he was 18. When most players have 2 years of junior under their belt and getting ready for their draft year, he was just getting started. He ended up getting drafted in the 4th round by the Senators in 2017 after completing his first full season. The year before, he had gotten into 10 games in the QMJHL with the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, which is basically like his hometown team where he got to play. And then he put up 58 points in 61 games. The following year, got noticed, got drafted by the Sens. Of course, it probably didn't hurt that he had a family connection. His uncle, Denis Vial, previously played for the Senators early in their existence as well. His uncle Norm also had a connection there. But then he gets noticed, gets drafted. He goes on to go back to junior after his draft plus 1 year, puts up even bigger numbers. Put up 77 points in 51 games, so that's a big improvement again over the previous year. He ended up getting traded from the Screaming Eagles to the Armada in the QMJHL. Went on to have a monster playoff, putting up 13 goals, 33 points in only 22 games, and he had a deep run, which was another big thing for him. He went on to also that same year, played for Canada at the World Juniors, scored 7 goals in 7 games. Was a bit of a coming out party for him there. And then he's been building between his time in the NHL and the AHL and NHL here so far. Like I said, this past year was essentially his first full season. Scored 17 goals, 17 assists for 30 points. So in an 82-game schedule, that's a 25-goal pace, essentially in your first full year. He's not really a rookie because he had played 2 years of 20 games before that each. So obviously not a complete rookie, but close. So that's an impressive number. To me, this guy is going to be a solid top 6 right winger with a great playmaking ability, who's likely going to be, in my opinion, I see him being like a 30-goal, 30-assist type of player in a year or two time when he really hits his peak. So to make under $5 million and to be that kind of a forward with good size and speed, good playmaker, good goal scorer, to me, that's a steal of a deal and will be a terrific contract for the Sens longer term. Of course, now the Sens turn even more of their attention to future captain, likely Brady Tkachuk, as they work on getting that RFA deal done. But I do suspect getting his teammate and line mate, Drake Batherson, all locked up here, likely will have a positive impact. It'll give a little bit more confidence in their camp that the Sens want to build around these guys moving forward to see him get paid. Now, Tkachuk is next on the radar, and I would suspect that it might take another week or two. Wouldn't be shocking if it's closer to training camp before that deal gets done. It could come sooner, but at this point, I think it's going to take a little bit more time before they get everything ironed out and hopefully get a long-term deal done for him as well. So let me know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.